Good day, and welcome to a conversation with the Honourable Erin O'Toole on Canada's Jewish and Israel relations in a changing world. I'm Andrea Spindle, Executive Director of the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation and the moderator for today's conversation, for which we've had over 300 people register. CAEF is a nonpartisan charitable organization educating Canadians about anti-Semitism and Israeli history and legal rights, and building Jewish pride, as well as supporting the freedom of expression and rights and freedoms for all persecuted minorities. For more information, please check our website at www.caef.ca. It's now my pleasure and honor to introduce the Honourable Peter Kent, Conservative Party of Canada MP for Thornhill, who will formally introduce our very special guest, after which I will pose a few questions to Mr. O'Toole.
Thanks, Andrea, and good afternoon, folks. At a time when intolerance is on the rise and the world's oldest hate is resurging in a variety of detestable ways, it's timely that the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation is hosting this session with the leader of the official opposition. Because our time is short today, limited by the demands of Parliament, I'll be brief in introducing my colleague and friend. But in short, his adult life has been in service of our country, in uniform as an officer in the Royal Canadian Air Force, as a lawyer and as a co-founder of the True Patriot Love Foundation that serves veterans and military families. And since 2012, elected 3 times as the Member of Parliament for Durham, serving as Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade, the Minister of Veterans Affairs, and for the past 2 years as Foreign Affairs Shadow Minister. And a highlight of my time in Parliament, my seatmate in the House of Commons those 2 years. He's married to Rebecca. They have 2 children, Molly and Jack. Folks, I give you the Honourable Erin O'Toole.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Peter Kent, a good friend, a great Canadian, a patriot, a strong friend of Israel, and a great seatmate. I'll tell you, seeing his photos of Peter reporting from Vietnam at the Berlin Wall, I learned so much from my colleague, and it's an honor to be introduced by him tonight. I'm looking forward to some questions, and thank you, Andrea, for the opportunity today to answer some questions. And so I'm going to keep my comments brief. I'm very proud, and I know Peter is, that the Conservative Party is a brokerage party of many Canadians from coast to coast to coast, all walks of life. We have a vibrant debate on a variety of subjects. But I'm so proud that one area of total unanimity is support for Israel and the Jewish peoples in Canada and around the world. And we were very proud to see that under Prime Minister Harper. Very proud that that remains part of our DNA as a party. That means we stand up to the unfair actions at the United Nations with their annual rite of passage for many countries to pass anti-Israel motions. It means we stand up for our friend through fire and ice, as has been said before. My personal experience, which I thought I would share, and I share because I didn't just come to this position from my time in Parliament. My own personal connection with Israel and the Jewish community comes from my late Uncle Paul Goodman, who married my Aunt Jane at a very transformative time in my life. My mother had passed away from breast cancer, and my Aunt Jane had been staying with us to help her brother with young children. Jane at the time was a Catholic nun who was called back from Brazil from her mission to help her family in need. She ended up leaving her vocation as a nun after this incident because she wanted to stay with our family. And eventually, as a nurse, she met a dentist from Thornhill, ironically, Paul Goodman, and they were married. And I got to celebrate Passover and learn so much. And my Uncle Paul was very close to me in terms of sending me stories on the Middle East because he was never satisfied with some of the reporting done by the Toronto Star or other outlets. And that's when I realized how difficult it often is for Israel to tell their story, to fight back against these waves of anti-Semitism and the singling out of the only democracy in the Middle East is so unfair. So I came to public life with that position. And as shadow minister for the last leader, Mr. Scheer, I was so proud that when Peter and I and several others proposed making a statement as a conservative government that we will declare Jerusalem the capital of Israel and support moving our embassy, not only were we proud to extend that policy as something we think is important, I was thrilled that our party in Halifax virtually unanimously adopted that position. Several thousand Canadians in a room in Halifax voting in favor of recognizing what we all know is that the Knesset, Jerusalem is the capital of modern Israel, and the roots very important for the Jewish people going back thousands of years. So it was a great opportunity for me as shadow minister to debut that policy for our party, and now as leader and hopefully prime minister, that will be a centerpiece of a natural evolution of the strong relationship between Canada and Israel. So with that said, you know a bit more about me, my experience, my points of view. I look forward to the questions from you, Andrea.
Thank you very much. I did solicit questions from across the country, so I'm pleased that several people sent them, and a few unsolicited I've also included here. So thank you for agreeing to take our questions. The first is from Marie Dodek, and David, if you're able to spotlight her, that would be great. Marie is a Holocaust survivor who works with the Holocaust Education Center in Vancouver, and she asks, given recent normalization of relations between Israel and two Arab states, how might Canada benefit from this change? And how might Canada help to expand such relations across the Middle East?
I see you there now, Maria. Well, thank you for working on education, Holocaust awareness, and educating generations of children, generations after this horrific crime against the Jewish people is critical to making sure that we live up to the principles of never again, never forget. And so thank you for what you do. The Abraham Accords and what's been happening lately is terrific news, because what has happened, and we see so often at the United Nations, is in the past, countries try and isolate Israel. And the more countries that normalize relations, sometimes those steps start in modest ways, as we've seen with some direct flights and normalizing of trade or diplomatic relations. But every journey, even a marathon, starts with the first few steps. So I love the fact that we've seen the UAE, Bahrain, join other countries like Jordan and Egypt in recognizing the state of Israel and the right for the Jewish people to have their state. That is great progress, and we'd love to see it continue if Canada can help in that fashion as a strong friend and ally of Israel, as a strong Five Eyes ally, a friend of the United States. We would certainly do that. The more we see stopping that isolation, we can then maybe see some of the unfair practices at the UN and its agencies end. So I'm sure all of us on this call have found that to be very positive steps towards peace, which is what people would like to see: peace and opportunity and respect.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Abe Silverman, Public Affairs Manager with B'nai B'rith Canada, and he's in Calgary. And he asks, Parliament voted to list the entirety of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a listed terrorist entity in 2018. And yet 2 years later, it remains legal to support it in Canada. B'nai B'rith was ultimately forced to launch a lawsuit in federal court against the government due to its inexplicable and ongoing delay in listing the IRGC, which we believe puts Canadian lives and interests at risk. How would your government address the terrorist threat of the IRGC?
Well, thank you, Mr. Silverman, and thank you for the work done by B'nai B'rith. Certainly both Peter and I regularly work with and hear from B'nai B'rith, which does some really good work, particularly highlighting some of the very troubling trends in anti-Semitic crimes and hate incidents. When it comes to the IRGC, there must have been a dog somewhere there on this Zoom call mad at the Liberals, barking for them to finally act 2 years after we passed the motion in the House of Commons. And Peter Kent would remember this as well as I do, because we were always in the House together at a time where we could sit close together without masks. We brought a motion And it was crazy to see the Liberals oppose the motion, claiming we were being political, claiming that we could not make the determination that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was a terrorist entity, when everyone knows the terrible work and the funding and training they provide, not just in the Middle East, but around the world, quite frankly. Midway through the day, thanks to pressure likely from many organizations like B'nai B'rith, but also some Persian Canadian and other persecuted groups of Iranians that were trying to flee the RRGC, the Liberals changed their tune midway through the vote. So they started opposing, and then some of their last speeches, it made it sound like they were voting, and they supported our motion, and then they did absolutely nothing. And you know, the tragedy here, we almost forget about this tragedy that at the beginning of the year, the Iran shot down an airliner and a Ukrainian airliner and killed Canadian citizens. It was IRGC officials that would have been involved with the targeting determination of a civilian airliner taking off from their capital city airport. So we have to call it out. This will be a priority if the Conservatives are able to form government. It's been shameful to see the Liberals support it and then foot drag and do nothing.
Thank you. I think we see that as fighting anti-Semitism big time. I have a question from Naomi Rosenfeld, the Executive Director of the Atlantic Jewish Council, who is in Halifax. You're probably aware that the Jewish community is the religious minority most frequently targeted, as you've said, Mr. O'Toole. Since the creation of the Public Safety Security Infrastructure Program under the government of Stephen Harper, hi there, Naomi, Jewish communities and institutions across Canada have benefited from the program. And for that, we are all extremely grateful. Unfortunately, hate crimes continue to occur, in which case we in the Jewish community are looking to the federal government to provide more resources to police services across the country, to establish dedicated hate crime units to ensure these incidents are investigated by officers who are equipped with the knowledge and experience and resources to do so. Can the Jewish community count on your support for these initiatives? What else would you do to ensure the protection of the Jewish community and our organizations from hate crimes?
Listen, Naomi, thank you for the question. I was just saying, I lived in Halifax for many years, went to law school and was in the military, and my wife is from Fall River. So when the bubble ends, I'm looking forward to getting back out there. As I said earlier, the Conservatives work very closely with B'nai B'rith and with other groups to highlight the troubling rise of anti-Semitic acts and constantly raise this in Parliament, in our social media, and in our public role as officials. Of course, it's been the Conservatives that have been the lead fighters against the BDS movement, which is the creeping wave of anti-Semitism dressed up in other forms. And Peter has been one of the strongest voices. I've been a strong voice. We brought a debate to Parliament on this very subject because the Liberals we're ignoring this issue. The Jewish community, sadly, pre-pandemic and in pandemic, have been subject to the largest number of hate crimes and attacks. And to see the rise on social media of some of these forms of anti-Semitism is deeply troubling. So we would certainly work with groups, organizations, law enforcement to raise awareness, to show a zero tolerance, and to educate, because part of this is making sure we call out the creeping edge of hate, like wrapping things up in BDS. And we do that regularly. I'll leave one last anecdote. When I was in Washington to negotiate trade in NAFTA, and the government wasn't doing a very good job, and we went down, we were an all-party parliamentary committee, and a US congressman from Florida, who happened to be Jewish, very close ties with Canada and a lot of Canadians in his district in Florida, brought up that morning, his son had sent him a note about an incident at McGill where the student council had kicked off a Jewish student from student council activities. So when we see what even seems like minor student politics games at our campuses, it reflects on our country around the world at the click of a mouse button or a phone. And so if we're not staying ahead of this by calling this out, by asking for and promoting free speech on campus and rooting out foreign influence on some of our campuses, we're not doing a service to peace, order, and good government and public safety. So you have our commitment to work on this continually.
That's great. Thank you very much. I have a question from Belle Jarnewski, who is from Winnipeg, and she is the Executive Director of the Jewish Heritage Organization of Western Canada. What would the Conservative Party of Canada do to encourage the adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism? For example, and I think you touched on it a bit, for example, in educational institutions such as universities, in the municipalities and the military. You've given us a good example, I believe, as to why we need it. What could you do to help us to achieve it?
Well, thanks for the question, Belle. Certainly, we think our role is to raise awareness and to promote an understanding of anti-Semitism, definitions in all its forms. The work your group is doing, and as you know, the Conservatives have not only been involved in this on an international basis, but we're even chair, I think, in 2013 of the International Coalition condemning anti-Semitism. So we're certainly there to be a partner with some things. It is not for a political party to force speech or adopt speech, but certainly we want to see a very strong condemnation and an education that goes behind the insidious forms that anti-Semitism can take these days. As I said, the boycott, divest, sanction model is used because it confuses people that don't understand issues related to Israel and the Jewish community. It's part of the reason why I've said that as conservative leader with a strong track record on LGBTQ rights, I've actually got a stronger record than the Prime Minister himself because I stand up for rights. But I will not participate in pride parades that have allowed BDS movements and anti-Israel floats and participation to creep into these events, because that is another expression of this insidious new trend of anti-Semitism trying to dress it up in other forms. So we're going to partner with your group and certainly raise the awareness. And as there are opportunities for your group to present definitions and proposals to institutions and other organizations, we will be there to talk about the importance of that thing, of that definition and dialogue.
Excuse me just a moment. I'm also a member of Canada's delegation to the IRA, and our government has adopted the definition in 2019. But my question was really more specific to the IRA definition, now adopted by 34 countries. There are some municipalities, for instance, some universities that have adopted it, but what would a conservative government do to help encourage other municipalities, universities, and the military, where anti-Semitism and other forms of racism are rampant? What would a conservative government do specifically to adopt this definition, which we have adopted as a country?
We have adopted it as a country, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's the role of the federal government to impose definitions or debates on a university campus, for example. In fact, I want to see strong debates on university campuses. In fact, I've gone and defended ideas, conservative and support for Israel on university campuses. The question, Val, I think the group has to realize is there's only one party in Ottawa that actually talks about anti-Semitism and walks the talk when it comes to BDS, when it comes to everything else, and that's the Conservative Party. The Liberal Party, and I wouldn't see much into the resignation of a recent MP, but the Liberal Party flip-flops on an almost yearly basis when it comes to Israel, whether at the UN or in other circumstances. So, you know, I'm being honest and direct with you. I think this is what I've said. We talk about what the federal government has done. We want to talk about those things, but you know, imposing things outside of our jurisdiction and is not generally what we do. We're one that respects provincial autonomy, for example, in healthcare and other things. So we will be there as allies, but not mandating anything.
Thank you. Mr. O'Toole, with your indulgence, I know the time is limited, but I do have one question I think everybody on our call today would be interested in hearing you speak to, and that is the funding of the United Nations Relief and Works organization, UNRWA, which has been a political arm in many ways of the Palestinian movement to undermine Israel. And they have a definition of refugee that is very different from the International Convention on Refugees that affects all other refugees in the world. Could you address how the conservative government would be in relation to holding UNRWA accountable or defunding it, as your previous conservative government had done?
Well, thanks, Andrea. I ran and won the leadership this time around, but I ran 3 years ago and came third. I prefer the last result much more than the first. And I guess I was missing Peter Kent the first time is really what it boils down to, Peter. So thank you for being with me. Both times I talked in my policies about the serious problems with UNRWA. And I've said for many years before I was shadow minister, going back 5-6 years, how I would like to see strict reforms imposed or funds withheld. So I don't think the reform is going to happen. As you said, the UN has a global refugee body in UNHCR, except for this long-standing exception, which has allowed a culture, an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel bias to be set in. We've seen multiple instances of it, and we should not be funding it. So I always say you indicate what change you want made. This is an international organization, an arm of the United Nations. If we don't see that, our power is to withdraw support and funding, and that is what we would do.
Thank you. And thank you so very much. We have taken you longer than you had agreed to stay, and we very much appreciate it. I'm sure that everyone has more questions, and perhaps they'll submit them to your office directly. Thank you so much for your time today, and to your staff for everything they've done to help me organize this, and for everyone who's participated and been available today to help us out. And well, take care, stay well.
Thank you, Andrea, and thanks to everyone for the work you're doing. It's been great to discuss all of these important issues with you today. Best wishes of health to you and your families.
Thank you so much.
Bye now. Bye, Peter. Thank you.